With the 2021 college football season concluding nearly a week ago, I find it appropriate to move on into the future and discuss my 2022 Top 25, my first edition of it. I will take about 30 seconds of my time explaining with brief, broad strokes why I think each team is where they are on what would be my quote-unquote ballot. A lot of people call these a way too early top 25, and I do want to say it's never too early. Never too early for a top 25 with how much data, analytics, with every resource we have. It's never too early to have an opinion and make projections. So without further ado, let's get right into the dirt and the nitty-gritty stuff that we all love. Number 1, Ohio State is where my ballot would start at. What's not to love about the Buckeyes? They have a generational offense once again with their quarterback CJ Stroud, running back Trevion Henderson, and star wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba returning, along with half of their offensive line. On defense, along with the O-line, they have new coaches at nearly every position, and they return most of their talent. And with 5 stars everywhere, Ryan Day seemingly having a game plan, motivation fueling them, I like the Buckeyes' chances to win a national title. Alabama can never be left out of the conversation, so that's part of the reason I have them at number 2, along with the fact that their defense, with Jordan Battle and others returning, might contend to be the best in the land, even with their spread offense. Their offense has had some inconsistencies, especially at the offensive line and wide receiver position. Their running back position, though, is loaded, and they do return Bryce Young and possibly wide receiver John Mechie. So Alabama, you could make an argument for them being at number 1. I just find that in an offensive renaissance, Alabama needs to sort out some of their offensive inconsistencies. Georgia at number 3, however, just proved that you don't need to run a spread offense, like a total spread, to win a national title. But here's the issue. Their defense has been elite every year. It only got them this far this year because of how many seniors and how much talent was stacked on top of an elite DC in Dan Lanning. Half of that defensive talent is gone, and their DC is off to Oregon to be their head coach. And day by day, they keep losing offensive pieces. They return wide receiver Ladd McConkey, tight end Brock Bowers, who are stars, but I can't really see personally Georgia winning a national title without that generational defense. But who knows? They do have an elite head coach and elite Alabama-like talent. Number 4, you got Michigan. Michigan is a step below the 4 teams. If you were to make a tier list, number 1 and number 2 would be tier 1. Georgia would be tier 1.5. Michigan would probably be the starting of tier 2. Michigan doesn't have the talent that the 3 above them do, but they do have almost all their offensive starters returning, minus 2 offensive linemen and running back Hassan Haskins. Their defense loses just about everyone, but with how good their staff did with a unit that was broken in 2020, you can't really expect them to have a bad defense. They get a new D-line coach who seems to be an upgrade from Sean Nua, and with J.J. McCarthy possibly starting under center, the Wolverines might launch themselves into an era of explosiveness on offense. Number 5, you have Utah. Utah is a team that, you look at talent, it is a massive drop. But I'd still put them around where Michigan is because they have proven time and time again to develop talent. They return around 13 starters, especially, most importantly, quarterback Cameron Rising. They will miss their linebacker core in Devin Lloyd and Nephi Sewell. We're off to the NFL. They're getting in some transfers, though. Utah's always solid on defense. This team can totally, like the 4 above them, contend. And because they're in a conference that doesn't necessarily have a lot of contenders yet, Utah is in a perfect position to take the next step forward. In a perfect position. At number 6, we have Oklahoma. Oklahoma, a lot of people could have them far lower. You could make an argument for it, and I would understand. But I look at Jeff Lebby having that connection once again with QB Dylan Gabriel, who is a great QB. I see them bringing in transfers, their good recruiting class, having Ted Roof assisting Brent Venables, calling the defense, and Venables, we all know how good of a DC he was at Clemson. There's just too much of a foundation at Oklahoma for me to see them crumble in a year. I don't think it's going to happen. Even with all their transfers away and Lincoln Riley, poaching most of the staff, you still have some staffers left, like O-line coach Bill Biedenbaugh, and I think wide receivers coach Cale Gundy, who are important aspects of the team remaining. At number 7, we have BYU. Now, you may be looking at BYU and thinking, why? Why are they here? And the answer to that is they return everyone but Tyler Algier and 2 of their wide receivers. They return 19 starters, and they've had back-to-back 10-win seasons. Everything looks to be going right for them. And even when Jeff Grimes departed to Baylor, they didn't miss at all on offense. They didn't. So BYU, if there is to be a group of 5 team who could be in playoff contention, it's totally them, but they have a very hard schedule, and a lot of the teams they face who are Power 5 obviously have a lot more talent than they do. Up next at number 8 is Clemson. Clemson, there's a reason Dabo Swinney won 2 national titles, so I don't like it when people ignore the fact that you can give Clemson the benefit of the doubt. My issue with Clemson is Clemson returns 11 offensive starters, and that's an issue because especially DJ Uiagalelei, they were not that good. The O-line was, far from good. Same with the QB position. The wide receivers had issues. The defense also loses their DC. Clemson, there's not a lot of evidence to point them being a top 10 team. I hate to say that. The only thing that points to them being a top 10 team is their OC, who developed amazing QBs. He's promoted from QB coach. And Cade Klubnik coming in and possibly starting as a true freshman. And Dabo Swinney, again. At number 9, you got Baylor. Baylor is, what can you say? Defensive-oriented team. They're coached by a genius. Gary Bohannon looks to return, and he'll compete with Blake Sharpen for the starting job. They lose a great portion of their starters, but their defense is always solid. The Big 12, to be honest, is a weak conference going through some changes and growing pains. Baylor could easily be like Iowa State this year, be a team with high expectations that falls short. But I look at them, look at the conference they're in. Dave Aranda's obviously a proven genius. They return their QB and some of their O-line. I think that they are set up for another year of success. I don't know about 12 wins, but another successful year indeed. And number 10, this will wrap up the top 10. We got Minnesota. This, along with BYU, is probably like the most controversial picks in my top 10. But Minnesota returns a lot of their O-line. They return Tanner Morgan. Their running back group, along with Alabama's, is probably the most loaded in the nation. And they return all of them, including Muhammad Ibrahim, who probably would have won the Doak Walker Award if he wasn't injured with his O-line. And their defense is solid. They got Kirk Shiroka back as their OC. He's going to do a lot better than Sanford Jr. did. So Minnesota, they're on the upswing. The culture that Fleck has built there is nearly indestructible. The fact they went 9-4 with the amount of injuries they had and the early demoralizing loss to Bowling Green, it just speaks endless amounts about how good their culture is. I have a lot of faith in PJ Fleck. So now, that's the top 10. we're now entering number 11 and number 12. Number 11, you got Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State being a team that returns the majority of their starters, but their defense was their strength. They lose some transfers to Ohio State. Some guys are going off to the draft. And their offense, they return a lot on offense, but Spencer Sanders wasn't that good. He never stepped it up until the bowl game. He didn't have the breakout year many thought he would, but his defense did a solid for him and carried the team along the way. I don't think they'll be able to do that this year, and seeing how Sanders never had that breakout year, it's safe to assume he probably won't. Oklahoma State will be good. I don't think they'll be top 10, though. And then Arkansas, what can I say about Arkansas? Sam Pittman is definitely on the rise. They return KJ Jefferson. They're recruiting at a higher level, but they're not there yet. Some people have them in the top 10. And my question to that is, with around 10 starters only returning, how do you expect them to compete with Alabama and Georgia and even some other teams in the West who might have more talent than them, even though they might have an inferior head coach? That's just my opinion, though, on Arkansas and these two teams. Again, Arkansas going in a perfect direction under Sam Pittman. At number 13 and 14, you got Pittsburgh and Nebraska. I'll explain the latter later, as that's probably making some of you, along with kind of myself, laughing. Pittsburgh is a team that they had good defensive line play. Their defense struggled a little bit, but they return a lot of that strong D-line. They're keeping the same DC. They have some questions on offense as Mark Whipple has departed. Kenny Pickett is off to the draft. But they got Keaton Slovis from the portal, who is a reliable QB. I have no doubt in my mind that Pat Narduzzi will find the right offensive coordinator. This year showed us all that he is truly a good head coach who should be appreciated more. I don't think Pitt is just going to go off the radar after having a good season like this. Nebraska is definitely the least proven team on my top 25, and yet they're in my top 15. Why is that, you may ask? The answer, of course, is the transfer portal, the fact that Mark Whipple has been brought from Pitt to Nebraska. Casey Thompson, mainly from the portal, is what I'm talking about. Their defenses under Eric Chinander get better every year. And I mean, honestly, with how good they played this year, despite not being able to finish games, Nebraska just does another thing right compared to last year. They will have a massive breakout year. And the way the transfer portal and staff changes are going, they just got a new running backs coach from TCU. They're making Power 5 hires. If this is the year for Nebraska, honestly, that's just my opinion. At number 15 and 16, got Notre Dame, and you have Michigan State. Notre Dame, they're going to have some issues, I think, because that bowl game loss, to me, was not flattering at all. And they lose Jack Cohn. They lose their stars on offense and on defense. They also lose their D-line coach to Michigan, which will hurt, as he is often considered the backbone of that defensive staff. Notre Dame's just not going away in a season, though. I'm not saying they're going to implode. But I think Marcus Freeman's going to have to do a little bit of learning on the job. It's good that they retained the majority of their staff, though. It will help them with the tough schedule they have. And Marcus Freeman is, if I'm being fair, is recruiting at a higher level already than Brian Kelly is. Things look to be bright for the Irish with potential growing pains. It's the same thing with Michigan State. Michigan State, they're recruiting at a higher level under Mel Tucker. I have massive respect for what he's doing there. The issue is they lose most of their O-line, which wasn't already good. They lose Kenneth Walker and the running back coach to the NFL and to Florida, respectively. And they lose, some of their defense as well. And they don't have the depth to immediately replace those players. They just don't. So Michigan State is going to be, like Notre Dame, a program that's heading in the right direction, I think, but they're going to have some growing pains along the way. Expect Peyton Thorne and Jaden Reed, though, for State to be explosive and deadly. At number 17, you have Tennessee. They return Hendon Hooker and the majority of their offense and a great portion of their defense. Josh Heupel is the guy, I think. And Tennessee's very confident in that. In the first season where they were under investigation, they had a poor recruiting class as a result of Jeremy Pruitt. The culture was eroded. They went 7-6. They were close in a lot of close losses as well. Hendon Hooker had an amazing year. Tennessee, I think, is primed not necessarily for a breakout year. I'm not trying to overhype them, but they're going to continue to build on a strong foundation that Heupel has built in year one. Number 18, North Carolina State. They return Devin Leary. They're powerful, and they have motivation too. I'm not ranking them in my top 10 for the simple fact that they're in the ACC. They have some questions overall, a lot of because of talent, but they return around 18 starters. They return almost all their defense, and having a QB return with the majority of their offense is just crazy, honestly. You cannot pick against NC State for the majority of their schedule, or just against them in general. They have motivation, they have a good coach, and they return their quarterback and the most of their team. Wake Forest, it's a similar story, but they lost their running back in the portal. They have less returning starters, and because of Wake Forest just even having less talent and less returning starters, losing some guys to the portal as well, I do have more faith in NC State, which is why I put them just one spot ahead. Dave Clawson has proven that he can do something with nothing, and that's great. It means you're a good head coach, but I don't know if they can necessarily contend for the ACC again. I think they'll be a solid team, and they do deserve some benefit of the doubt, but with me already having NC State ahead of them and having Clemson ahead of them and Pitt, I don't know. Can Wake Forest reach the championship game again? Next up, number 20, Texas A&M. Texas A&M, a lot of people are high on them. You know, ESPN has them for some reason in their top 4. They return 10 defensive starters. They do have some key additions, mainly, Max Johnson and Connor Weigman. Weigman will be a true freshman in 2022. Johnson being a transfer from LSU. Here's the issue, though. I think, personally, it'll take a year for that talented recruiting class, who's number 1 in the nation, to cycle through. It'll take about a year, and just seeing some of the teams they lost to and their poor performances, despite returning some talent, I don't know. Is Jimbo the guy to have Texas A&M win in the SEC? Is he? It's a question that I think is appropriate to ask. Number 21, Wisconsin. I'm done with thinking that Wisconsin's going to win the West. Graham Mertz is, pardon me, but the equivalent of a molding block of cheese when it comes to being a quarterback. I can't watch him. I can't stand it. They are a quarterback away from greatness, but they don't seem to be pursuing one in the portal. If they stick with Mertz, it'll be another 9-4 about season. And they do lose starters on offense and defense. So you can't have mediocre QB play and expect to always return your starters. And yeah, Wisconsin, they need a QB. They're a QB away from greatness. It's just my opinion, and I think it is, especially this year, rooted in some evidence. 22, Cincinnati. They lose nearly all of their defense, but not to worry, as Mike Tressel is their defensive coordinator. He did very well at State. He did well this year with Cincy. The problem is losing Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder was not the greatest QB, but he was good. The question is, can redshirt freshman Evan Prater replace him and bring them another American Conference championship? That is the question. They return a little less than 10 starters, and with the American, with Houston being a little more powerful, kind of looming over, we'll see what the Bearcats can do. At number 23, the final edition of the top 25, the final slide, 23 UCLA. They return running back Zach Charbonnet. They return QB Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And Chip Kelly just got a contract extension, and they're recruiting modestly. And I think this team, once again, will have an opportunity to contend for the South, with USC probably having maybe a rebuilding year under Riley, Arizona State and Arizona having some questions. UCLA's in a good position. Number 24, got the Houston Cougars. Since he is mainly ranked ahead of them for the benefit of the doubt, I do think that Luke Fickell is a better head coach than Dana Holgorsen, and Cincinnati does have they do have higher talent than Houston does. But Houston returns more starters. Houston returns the majority of their offense and defense. Clayton Tune, their quarterback, running back Alton McCaskill, and receiver Nathaniel Dell are going to be deadly. Dana Holgorsen, he likes those offenses. He likes those air raids. He ran those at West Virginia. Houston can totally win the American. I just have questions as to whether they can finish the job. Because like I said, again, I think that Cincinnati's coaching staff is better assembled, just better overall than Houston's is. And then finally, South Carolina at number 25, the wild card. The wild card. That's what South Carolina is. They bring in transfer QB Spencer Rattler. They bring in some other transfers as well. They bring in 3 quarterbacks signed in the 2022 recruiting class. So Shane Beamer is obviously trying to get some options at the quarterback position. They return a lot of their offense. That win over North Carolina in the Mayo Bowl just told me that they're heading in the right direction. And their depth isn't the greatest, but honestly, they're recruiting better. The transfer portal certainly is going to help them. Shane Beamer, like some of these other teams with younger first-time head coaches, they're heading in the right direction. And that is what matters. And that right there is my top 25 entering 2022. If you have questions, ask me below. Why did I rank these teams? And I'll probably give some more specific details. I just wanted to keep it brief, keep it short, mostly under a minute for each team, and that's how it should be this early in the year. If you like this video, remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. I'm doing a giveaway at 3,000 subscribers, so stay tuned for that. Again, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video around. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.